you're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, brook-tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their wildness and actualize their deepest gifts. And whilst we don't currently have any openings to walk the path of Wake the Wild, I would very much suggest you come join our community in our free Facebook group if you're not already a member. It's such a gorgeous community of wise and wild people. And it's very much our intention to nurture that group further over the coming months to make it an even more powerful place to be. Come join us over at facebook.com/group/primalhappiness. Very much I hope you see you there soon. And now onto this week's show. It's with Bonnie Bliss, a somatic sexologist, pleasure educator, and women's pelvic wellness coach. She has spent the last decade supporting thousands of women all over the world to discover the incredible world within their bodies. Her background is private client work and group work, having completed over 10,000 hours with one-to-one clients in person, as well as facilitated retreats and workshops both in Australia and internationally. In this show, we spoke about how and why women can reclaim and rewild their sexuality, including what makes that challenging and how we can overcome those challenges. Let's dive in. Hello, Bonnie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is going to be fun. I'm loving your energy. It's felt like a really delightful conversation already. So this is going to be a lovely one, I know.
I'm excited.
So we were just having a bit of an exploration around the whole topic of reclaiming sexuality as a woman and kind of your experience of that and my sense of that and how that fits with the show. And I've just realised, as ever, it's really wonderful to know why people got into doing what they're doing. So before we go anywhere else, I would just love to know, how the hell did you get into this work? Why is this your passion?
Oh, well, it's been a pretty crazy journey over the last maybe 10 years or so that I've been doing this work. But it initially started from feeling a lot of physical numbness in my body, feeling quite disconnected from my sensual self, from my sexuality. You know, I got into a lot of experiences in my late teens and early 20s, sexual experiences with people who were just not right for me, and kind of doing things because they wanted to, or doing things because I wanted to feel loved or wanted or needed, but not because I had any real connection to my body or my pleasure or what I wanted. And you know, I didn't have an orgasm with a lover for the first 7 years I was sexually active.
Wow.
And I felt like it's not possible. I thought pleasure's not possible. That's something other people experience. My body's just numb. It doesn't work. And every time I'd start dating someone new in my early 20s, I'd say, oh, don't even bother trying to make me come. It's not going to happen.
Oh,
don't worry about it. I just enjoy I enjoy the sex anyway, but don't even worry about that. It's not going to happen. And I really felt like that was it for me. I felt like I'm numb. I don't feel anything. I could have a really quick orgasm with a vibrator. I felt, you know, I was very in my head, quite heady and very busy and anxious, a lot of anxiety, and a really deep-seated unworthiness that I think, you know, came from childhood things and different challenges. I was bullied a lot at school, and I just had this really deep sense of like, I am not good enough and nothing I do will ever be enough. And from there, I think when I was 25, I met a partner who introduced me to this whole other way of intimate relating and connecting and sexuality and pleasure that was huge for me and really opened me up to pleasure that was beyond anything I could have imagined. And, this whole world of spirituality and intimacy that just blew my mind. And that kind of, I guess, was the catalyst for me and took me on a whole journey over the last 10 years. And we lived in Copenhagen for a long time, and I've spent a lot of time in India and just explored this work in so many different ways. And I've done a lot of different embodiment and sexuality and pleasure and, pelvic training. Like my specialty is internal pelvic bodywork for women. Mm-hmm. So I like to say that I've done all of the trainings that I could get my hands on or hands in. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how it all started.
Wow. Oh gosh, I really felt your heart in that as well. I sort of could really feel your emotion rising as you were sharing your story. And there's, it's interesting. I'm going to share in a moment my experiences, because I think they're quite almost like the polar opposite to yours, but not in a good way, if that makes any sense. I'll share a bit more of that in a moment. But my sense of it is, from speaking to a lot of women about their relationship to their sexuality, what you're describing is really common. I don't know if you'd agree. Maybe it's the majority. That's certainly been my sense from talking to women about these things. Would you say so?
I would say so, yeah. I would definitely agree.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I had just as much of a, let's say, fractured relationship to my sexuality, but it was, I guess you could say, almost masculine, as in you were sort of saying it was almost like you didn't even know it was possible for you to receive pleasure that way. I was the opposite. It was like I completely could, but that was my focus, almost like in a very selfish, like that's what it's for. And I could orgasm really easily. And it seemingly had a really healthy relationship, but it's only as I've done the work to understand like what was going on for me and where I was actually really guarded, even though seemingly not, I've realized like, oh, I was just as fractured, had such a disconnected relationship. I was just at the other end of the pole to what most women are describing. So I share that just to say it's like I can't relate to it, but I can relate to it from a perspective of like really understanding like how that disconnection from our sexuality really does hold us back from, I guess, just like a deeper intimacy with life, with ourself.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like it's really, sometimes people say to me, why are you so obsessed with sexuality? You're always talking about pleasure and orgasm. What's the point of that? Why is that important? But I often say, no, it's connected to everything. Like when I feel disconnected from my pleasure and from my pelvic space and from my body, I'm disconnected from life. I feel flat and numb and uninspired, and the creativity is not flowing and nothing feels good.
And that leads on really beautifully for the next question I was going to ask you. For people that are listening, they may be feeling something similar. Like, is that not just like one small area of life? Why does that matter? Why does this link so deeply to everything else?
Oh, well, I feel like pleasure, especially, we often limit it to the genitals or to the sexual act. And that for me is something that really brings up a lot of emotion with the women that I work with, because often there is this focus on like pleasure happens, we kind of outsource it to a partner. Pleasure is what you do with someone else, and they do something to your genitals for 5 minutes and then you feel pleasure or you don't, and that's it. And my sense is that pleasure is connected to all of life. It's how we move through the world. It's how we feel in our bodies. It's how we feel about ourselves. It's how we engage with the senses and find things that we enjoy and find meaning and find joy and find creative flow and find, a sense of aliveness, I guess, in our bodies and therefore in our lives. And I know for me, when I'm connected to my pleasure and to my body, I am a better human. I have more energy. I can show up more fully. I'm more productive. Things get done more easily. I'm more fun to be around. I think my sense of humor is better. Everything just feels more flowing. And that is a big gift to people around me. Often we want to kind of outsource pleasure and say, well, this is that person's, my partner's responsibility. They are going to do this to me. But when we take responsibility for it ourselves and bring pleasure into our daily lives and into our own bodies in our self-intimacy, then that can bring a lot back to an intimate relationship if we're in one, or our relationships in general, by showing up to, you know, our kids or our loved ones or our family feeling full and alive and connected within ourselves.
Yeah, I really relate to that. It makes so much sense. And it's interesting how, and again, it makes so much sense in this culture where we just commodify things and package things and want them to be in nice, neat boxes. And like pleasure absolutely has a box. And then sex has a box. Sometimes it's the same box, sometimes it isn't. Rather than it just be a way that we move through life, a way that we are in life. Something that I have spent time, I guess, in inquiry around, and I just wondered what your sense of this was. Sometimes you could call it, I guess, life force energy and sexual energy. In some schools of thought, they're one and the same. And certainly there's been times where I've very much experienced them as the same. And there's times where I can kind of more see, oh no, it makes more sense to have a distinction of how it shows up here versus here. But I just wondered, again, I'm not really looking for a kind of like absolute factual right or wrong. I just would love to know your sense of that.
Yeah, I definitely see them as very, if not the same, then very intertwined. Yeah, it's, I mean, I have to say, just as a disclaimer, there are people who really identify as asexual, and I really want to honor that. I don't want to say that absolutely everyone needs to reclaim their sexuality and you know, connect with their genitals in a particular way, because I think that is a you know, a particular thing for many people. But I also know that a lot of people who would say that they feel disconnected from pleasure, from their sexuality, just haven't explored what's possible, or haven't, you know, have received conditioning that was not supportive, and have, you know, internalized sexual shame and shame around their bodies, and just not known about how they could relate to their pleasure, their sexuality, their pelvic space to connect with that. But I do definitely see it as a life force energy.
Yeah, which then makes so much sense why it then fuels everything else. You know, as you say, a sense of humor, creativity. Of course it would. Of course it would. It's life.
Of course. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you just mentioned the role of shame. And you know, so much again in my work is realizing that often is the same, it's the common denominator. It's the thing that keeps us trapped in so many areas. And of course, when it's something like sexuality, that's where it really is going to come with not just the, and I say just, that's really in quote marks, not just that kind of personal shame, but of course, there's so much cultural shame too when it comes to this particular topic, which then makes it more challenging often to shine a light there. There's almost a kind of like a kind of gates closed before we can get close to it. Like, no, that's just not even safe to go there because there is so much shame here. What's your, how, I mean, I guess there's already almost an opening anyway. When a woman comes to work with you, she's already kind of unlocked that first gate. You know, she's ready to look underneath the shame. But just talking in general, about the way that shame shows up for women in the area of their sexuality. What I guess, what's the question I'm wanting to ask you? What have you seen is, I guess, the door opener, the way that we can journey into those places in a way that does feel kind of safe and good to our system?
Yeah, shame. I mean, you touched on it. Shame is huge for many of us, and it comes from the culture that we've grown up in. I mean, not all cultures, right? Like some South American cultures especially are quite open sexually in a way that those of us in Australia and Europe may not be, or culturally speaking. But, you know, that shame can come from our parents. It can come from kids at school. It can come from, you know, starting to watch porn at quite a young age. Kids are exposed to porn at the age of 10 or 11 these days. And things
which is shocking. I've got a 10 and an 11-year-old, so that just blows my mind.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's really alarming. And things that we might have internalized from what partners have said over the years, and things we receive from just popular culture. There is this like, sex is the thing we just don't talk about, and we talk about everything except that. And
completely.
Even when we start to discover our bodies as children, there's that really natural, innocent exploration of like, oh, I'm just touching my body, and oh, this feels good, and oh, that feels really good there. What's that about? And it's just so pure and so natural and beautiful.
Yes.
But often what happens is parents will find their kids in that space, and even though they might be like, okay, shit, how do I be cool, and how do I not shame them? And there's that awareness, but there's still that internal rigidity or fear or weirdness that kids feel, right? Kids are so intuitive and clear, and they feel those things. So it is a big challenge. And I think women who come to me wanting to explore this work, I mean, the main thing I do these days is I have a group online training called Yoni Club, and nearly 1,000 women, over 1,000 women have taken the training so far, and we actually go into shame as one of the topics of the program, and I have someone come in and teach on it because I think it is important. And having said that, though, like, running an online program, I can see that shame is also something that stops people from starting, because they need to, because I'm not there holding their hand, right? So they need to actually open the learning portal and click play on the first video, and then watch the next one, and then do a little practice. And it can be paralyzing. Like, I really see there's this paralysis that comes from shame. And someone said something the other day, which was really fascinating. We were talking about things that block us from getting started or stepping into this or stepping into a new way forward. And she said, well, I'm scared to start, because if I start and if I don't feel anything, that it'll prove that I'm broken and pleasure's not for me, that it's not possible for me to feel pleasure. So I think sometimes we're really identified with that, I'm broken, or I'm stuck, or there's no way forward. And it can be really scary to step into exploring this, because we don't know what we'll find.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love so much what you've just said. I'm going to ask you a question relating to what that woman said to you, because I think that shows up in so many other kinds of work, any kind of transformation work. But I'd love to know your sense of that in a moment. But a couple of things I thought of as you were talking. One being, as you say, we have a cultural taboo about sex, but this isn't a natural human taboo, and it certainly isn't even a kind of true to all modern cultures even. I was just what came to mind was a book called is it called Indigenous Wisdom, something like that. I've got a real mental block with book names at the moment. I'm usually really good at remembering them. Anyway, that particular book is nothing to do with sexuality. So it was. I loved the way it was just such a side note, where it was an Indigenous band of people, and just sort of following their very, very kind of like how humans have lived for most of our time on the planet kind of lifestyle. And when they typically shared the sleeping huts, they'd all sleep together in groups, I don't know, 8 or 10. And when people wanted to have sex, they might just literally have sex in the corner of that particular hut, or they might just go off into the bushes. But it was like no big deal. It was just like, it's not a thing. It's just the same as sleeping. And I love the way it was just like, just dropped in. Like, yes, sometimes there might be like a couple quietly making love in the corner of the hut. It just popped to mind. And then the other thing is, you were saying about as children start to explore themselves and discover pleasure, how even when as a parent you have that consciousness of not wanting to shame them, and actually wanting to grow up with a good sense of a relationship to pleasure and their sexuality, there's still so much in our own systems of that shame. And I was just thinking, I'm kind of, I guess, a second generation of having less shame than average, as in my father was very open-minded, had a very good relationship to his sexuality. I didn't get any of that kind of shaming from him. I was brought up by a single father, so my mother didn't have a kind of role in that. So I'm kind of second generation, And yet I still notice, even when I notice the ways that I could still bring that shame into my children. Obviously I'm doing my best to navigate that, but I notice that's still in my system because it's in my DNA. It's in so many years, so many generations of that conditioning. Even with that amount of consciousness, even second generation lack of shame is still so present.
And often we don't always realize exactly how it plays out.
Yeah. And, that in itself just takes that work to keep illuminating. Oh, yeah, there's still shame here. Anyway, going back to what that woman asked you or shared with you, that she was scared to even set foot on that journey because it's almost, and funny enough, I had a woman say something similar to me about our next program, which is to do with embodying and expressing your soul work. And she said something so similar. It's actually scarier, the thought of doing it and then getting to the end and still having no clue and still not being able to kind of embody your soul work than to just stay stuck and I didn't even try, therefore I don't know, it's not been proven that I'm a failure. So I'd love to know what your sense of that is, maybe what you even said to her.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a theme coming up because we've recently started a new program, and it's been a theme with quite a few people scared of starting. And what I'm really saying to them is it's really normal. The fact that you feel that hesitation, that resistance, it's all normal. We can kind of come into this kind of thing with this perfectionist ideals. We live in a world that's, quite linear and masculine in many ways, and where we can be trained to be quite heady. We've been trained to prefer intellectual knowledge over embodied wisdom. We are, spending so much time on our screens. We're not living in alignment with how our bodies are designed to live. You spoke about that Indigenous wisdom book and, how people would just naturally be at that time. Or in Indigenous cultures, which
is very money. It's called original wisdom. I knew I'd said the name wrong, but thank you.
Yeah. Beautiful. It's amazing. Yeah. And, our bodies are not designed to live how we live now. And the fact that we are even open to explore this kind of work, I think is massively worthy of celebrating, because a lot of people will never come to the point where they're like, you know what, I actually realize that I want to reclaim my pleasure and my sexuality, and I want to connect deeply with my body and discover what's there, because I have the sense that there's something else out there than what I'm currently experiencing. I think that is amazing place to be. And that's really what I tell people when they come with that. And really just to hold yourself with compassion and to, as much as you can, let go of that sense of I need to be productive, or I need to be perfect, or I need to get it all done, or I can't start until I've got 10 hours to do all of it. It's you can watch the first video, you can do 1 5-minute practice. And a lot of this stuff doesn't need to be complicated. I'm really about things that make sense in our daily lives, things that we can ease into gently, things that really massively impact our capacity to feel pleasure in intimacy. A lot of people come to me wanting to have better orgasms or deeper orgasms or different orgasms. And, one of the first things I'll always do with them is help them to explore how they relate to their body generally and their pleasure generally in their lives as they move through their day, as they're sitting at their desk, as they're staring out the window, as they're talking to a friend. Because it's all connected. You can't completely separate out sexuality and put it in a little box as something that happens late at night. It's, we are sensual beings, and we can be connected to our bodies and to our pleasure at different points in our day, maybe not for every moment of the whole day, but there's so much available there to us to connect with.
Yeah, I love that. And there feels to me something so powerful about just setting foot on a path, when we're really feeling that call to a path, whether that be in your instance, a woman feeling the call to work with you and understand her relationship to her sexuality. I think making that sovereign choice to step foot on the path and follow that first breadcrumb, however small, that can't, nothing can stay the same. There isn't even possible that she could be 6 months down that path and it's nothing's happened. To me, that's just unfathomable. Of course, that just can't happen. So, I absolutely love that. So let me just see, where are we doing for time? I want to ask you some kind of just ways that women can make this, start to take steps on that path. But I feel like I just want to ask you something else first. Give me a moment. This is related to what we were talking about shame, and maybe this is almost a kind of step back from that kind of like choosing into the path. But again, through the work that I do with women, it never ceases to amaze me how much this is just not in our conversations. It's really weird. I mean, again, here in the UK, we're like, on the one hand, sex obsessed, on the other hand, like, can't talk about it. And for example, when I'm holding circles and women are talking about self-pleasure, that will often be one of the very first times they've talked about self-pleasure with other women. And they might have really amazing, like deep friendships with other women. And it's been like a topic that just like isn't spoken about. Like, no, nice ladies don't do those things. Mm-hmm. And I find that fascinating, even it's like completely understandable, but fascinating. But this is something I think, again, there is that kind of like shame in just confronting your own relationship to these things. But there's also, this is like almost an identity shift too. Is this something, for example, if a woman was to start to reclaim her sexuality, how does she talk to her friends about that? What does that make her look like? Suddenly, I know that some women, when we talked about these things, are like, does that make me like dirty? Almost like sex obsessed, like just to want to walk this path. Does that make me a bit of a freak? And I think that can be another thing that has this like extra level of sort of blockage before they're even able to do that. Because again, it is quite an identity shift outside of this kind of cultural version of a good girl, of someone who's acceptable. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the good girl is a big one. The nice girl, the sweet girl, the good girl. And there can be
the sexless girl.
And we're wired on so many levels we're relational beings, we're tribal beings, where it's, there can be this very real fear of like, will I be excluded from my tribe if I take a new path, if I explore something that maybe my friends are not interested in exploring, or that my friends are actively denying or shaming me for exploring. And and who will I become? And then will I still fit in with them? What will they think of me? Where will I be in the world? What about my family? What will I need to lead a double life?
Yes.
It's a very real challenge that many people go through. And working with a lot of couples over the years, and also working with many people who are in relationship but not working with their partner, that can be challenging when there's one person in a partnership who is on a really deep journey with their body and their pleasure and their sexuality, and their partner is like not interested in that shit, don't even want to have sex, or just, really not open to explore anything in any way. We have sex twice a week for 5 minutes. What's your problem? You know? And or why do we need to do it differently? Or what's the point of exploring longer foreplay? Or what's the point of exploring different kinds of pleasure or orgasm? Or you have orgasms, what's your problem? Like, that's fine. Why are you complaining? And there can be, sometimes it can lead people to end relationships, because they might get to a point where they're like, wow, this person is really not open to go on a sexual journey with me. And I'm realizing that is important to me right now. So I can't be in this situation anymore, or I need to really shift things in order to, and that can really shake the foundations of your reality. Definitely.
Yeah. So what would you say to women who are kind of on the, all those very real, again, these aren't even silly fears, they, as you say, relationships can actually end as a result. So what would you say to women who have that kind of like, is this something I even want to choose? Like, do I want to choose potentially have to lead a double life, or, friendships end or relationships end? What would you say? I mean, I'm guessing you've got your own version of that yourself, because, you're out and proud of your work, which means I'm guessing your parents, your friends, everyone knows what you do. So either how was that for you, and how did you sort of choose into it anyway? Or what have you seen has been helpful for other women kind of in that, like, oh, is this something I really want?
I've definitely been through some shame with it. And when I first started doing this work, I was living away from Australia for a few years, and I didn't tell some of my friends from back home for a couple of years until I saw them again, because I just felt like, oh, what are they going to think of me? I was quiet about it on social media for the first maybe 2 years that I was doing this kind of work. And then I realized, no, this doesn't make sense. I need to start speaking about it. And I went through some shame and a little bit of judgment from people, but I'm pretty lucky. It was received pretty well, and people were really open and supportive. But that's not always the case. And I think ultimately, even though that fear can be there, I would say, firstly, it's not an either or. It's not like I'm going to unleash the full force of infinite pleasure on the world, or I'm going to keep it completely locked up and numb and be really tense and disconnected. There's not an either or. I think sometimes because, if we have like repressed or avoided our sexuality for so long, like I have in the past, there can be this real tension around it, this real sense of like, oh, it's really locked up in there. And if I even peek into it, like Pandora's box, right? If I even peek into it a little bit, all hell will break loose.
Yes.
and what I can say for absolute certain is that all hell will not break loose. And, you'll peek into it, and moments of it will be a little confronting, and moments of it will be really fascinating and glorious. And what I have loved so much about it is that it's connected me with my authentic self in so many ways. And, obviously doing this work is a whole other version of that. But even just connecting really deeply with my body and my pleasure and my sexuality has revolutionized my life in ways that I can't imagine if that didn't happen. I can't imagine if I didn't meet that partner at that time and I'd never, had that whole journey over the last decade. Sure, I'd be in a different career. I don't know what I'd be doing, but I'd probably be still quite disconnected from myself. And maybe, I'm not sure, we never know, right? But I'm really grateful to be generally living a life that feels really aligned and true for me. And I feel like pleasure is a really important part of that. And it's, I don't think we ever regret. I don't think anyone is on their deathbed saying, oh, I just wish I hadn't enjoyed my life, or I wish I hadn't spent so much time feeling good, or I wish I hadn't really had that really epic journey with my pleasure and my sexuality and my pelvic area. That was a whole waste of time. Like, no one says that. Those orgasms were shit. Why did I bother?
I could have been so much better off just working a bit harder.
Exactly.
I love, do you know what? I really loved that you connected this back to, ultimately, this is us returning to the gift that we are, that kind of deepest, most authentic self. This, again, we can, because we're having to use language to kind of name things, it can kind of seem like, oh, this is just sexuality. But ultimately, this is just one of those paths back to being who we really are, which, like, is that worth it? Of course it is. What else is there to do?
Yeah, it's a coming home to yourself. I feel like that's language that women, when I've done a lot of one-on-one session work, that's come up a lot in that work, where they say afterwards, I feel like I've met myself for the first time, or I feel like I'm home in myself for the first time, or I had no idea my body could feel like that. There is this kind of homecoming or arriving in yourself that is quite profound.
And I think what I've really noticed with my own path with this, and in all the different ways I've taken this path, is, yes, there are, I guess, some relationships that then don't seem aligned. But in general, the ones that are, the people who are meant to walk that path with you, they love to get to see more of you. They'd love you to be more of you. And that's what I just see more and more. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they share that particular interest, but it doesn't matter. If they are getting to experience more of you, that in itself is a gift.
And they see the change in you, right? If you're relating with people in your life who see you feeling more connected or more open or more relaxed in yourself, they'll be happy for you if they care about you.
Totally. Oh, I love this. So rich. So for anyone listening that is feeling that kind of like maybe first or tentative, wanting to like take a foot onto this path, or maybe they're already a way down there, but they've heard something in this that's made them realize like, oh, actually, this is the kind of the next breadcrumb for me into that me being more who I am. What's some practices or things to illuminate that you've found helpful for women as they're starting to move deeper into the path of reclaiming their sexuality?
Oh, my favorite topic. So, like I mentioned before, I think one of the most fascinating inspirations is really diving into the senses throughout our day. And that's something that I love because it doesn't take extra time. We don't need to allocate time for it. It's just, feeling the warmth of the cup in your hand, tasting the taste of the food you've made, looking out the window and seeing how beautiful the sky is, or seeing the wind in the trees, or enjoying the song playing in the background. We have all these chances throughout our day to come into a sense of pleasure through our external environment. So for me, that's like certain colors. I'm obsessed with the color teal. I love certain textures, feeling like certain fabrics on my skin. And I can have all these little moments throughout my day where I can just drink in some little external pleasure. And that connects me to myself and my sensual self. And a connection with our sensual selves is really essential if we want to connect deeply with our sexual selves. So that is I guess, number one thing that I always recommend starting with. And then my other really very dear to my heart practice is self-touch. And obviously, like a lot of my work has been internal pelvic work. So there's a lot of, in my work, we learn how to use a wand internally to release physical tension from the pelvic area and to bring sensitivity to lots of different internal pleasure zones. But that's a bit of a longer practice, and it's not something that is good to do straight away without quite a lot of warm up in different ways and preliminary practices. But for me, I feel like relating to the lower body, the pelvic area, is really important, and we can do that through just touching the bones. Like if you're listening to this, you can just bring your hands down and just put your hands on your hips and feel your hip bones, and maybe just wiggle them a little under your hands and just see how it feels to connect with your lower body, and then move your hands around to your pubic bone and your tailbone, your sacrum and coccyx, that area, and just feel the front and back and the sides of your pelvic area, and just bring your energy and your focus into this space, because the pelvis is as my friend Gigi says, it's the organizational center of all movement in the body. It's our base, really. And when we connect with this area throughout our day, it kind of brings us out of our mind and out of our busyness and into this pleasure and aliveness and sensuality of the body. And we can do that through touch and holding. And, I also love doing a lot of like whole body touch, stroking and that kind of thing, just to bring that sensual energy through the whole body. But we can also do it from just wiggling, from just moving our hips, or doing some little jiggles or circles or rocking or thrusting. And I'll often do that while I'm sitting in my chair or while I'm driving. Or while I'm, the other day I was watching Netflix and just like lying on my belly on my bed, but just like jiggling my butt at the same time. And it's quite lovely. Like there's so many opportunities throughout the day to move our bodies, to touch our bodies, that can bring us into the moment in a deeper way. And definitely see what happens with those practices is we're kind of bridging the gap, because people might say, yeah, but how does that make my orgasms better? But what that does is that when we're connected to our sensual selves and our bodies and our pleasure in tiny ways throughout the day, then when we want to go deeper into more genital focused intimacy, whether that's our self-exploration or self-pleasure or with a lover, we are already in that sense of aliveness and pleasure and sensuality. We're not going from like totally numb and flat and disconnected, and I've just been on the computer for 10 hours straight and I do not have a body. I know that place very well. We're not going straight from that to like intimacy. I remember there was a partner I had in the past where he kind of pulled me up on this pattern I had of going to him totally empty, and really just like, I'm flatlining, I've got zero batteries, and you're going to give me the pleasure. It's your job to give me pleasure. You didn't make me orgasm. What's wrong with you? And I realized it was really helpful to get that feedback and to realize, wow, okay, I've got to connect with this for myself. I've got to connect with my own aliveness and pleasure and sensuality generally. And of course, also we need to be in relationship with people who, have some kind of skills and who are, present with us and caring and supportive and definitely see the importance of foreplay and all of that. It's very important, but we can bring a lot to an intimate relationship when we're connected to our own pleasure and sensuality. And that also can help open us to more curiosity and exploration in intimacy with someone else as well.
Oh, I love that. I love the story of your ex-partner sharing that with you. It's, I think, so common for women to do that. As you say, that kind of 10 hours on the computer. Okay, I'm home. Now it's your job to do pleasure to me. Yeah. And I completely agree. The practices you've invited listeners into, I think, are gorgeous. I sometimes talk about it as ways to keep the pilot light on. So you're not going from this kind of completely cold, dead furnace to right, okay, how do we get a raging fire going? Just keep the pilot light on. It's so much easier. It's enjoyable just to have the pilot light on, but it's so much easier to then crank it up when you want to.
Totally.
Yeah, wonderful. So if listeners like to find out about you and your wonderful work, where can they go to find out about all that good stuff?
Sure. So my website is bonniebliss.co. I'm also on Instagram at bonniebliss.co. And if you head over to my website, there's a free Sexual Wellness 101 audio training that will give you a bit more of my perspective on the pelvic work and orgasm and sexuality more specifically. And I run a program called Yoni Club, which is, I started it, it's kind of like Pony Club, the cool girls at school. They all went to Pony Club. That. And I'm I'm going to start Yoni Club. So Yoni is a Sanskrit word, which means, the whole of the female reproductive system and genitalia and the whole pelvic space, basically. And we open that a few times a year. So we're closed at the moment, but we open again in January. And there is a wait list, so you can get on the wait list if you're interested in reclaiming your pleasure and your sensual self and releasing shame and numbness and connecting more deeply with your body in all the ways.
Gorgeous. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie. This really has been a pleasure. You bring pleasure wherever you go. But thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute joy.
Oh, thank you. I loved that. Such an important and necessary topic. Here are my best bits. Reclaiming your sexuality is so important and powerful because it isn't really just about sexuality. It links to how available we are to all of life. There can be a real obstacle in reclaiming sexuality because of our cultural taboos, creating shame and fear of being seen as different or dirty. We really need support to be able to move through those. Allow yourself to slowly resensitize. Notice the warmth of your cup, the way the fabric feels against your skin. Bring awareness to your pelvic area, gently touching and holding. If you'd like to get the notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, hop on over to the show notes, and they're at primalhappiness.co/episode 308. And if you don't want to miss out on next week's episode, and oh my gosh, we have got a veritable treasure trove of episodes. Honestly, we can't get them out fast enough. We have got so many amazing episodes recorded at the moment, and they'll be coming out over the next few months. So if you're not already subscribed, make sure you get subscribed. And you can do that on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, or your Android or iOS app of choice. Hit subscribe, and that way you'll get each episode delivered straight to your device as soon as it comes out. Also, if you haven't left us a review before, that would be really lovely of you. It does help people find out about the show and decide if it's for them. It also gives me a bit of a thrill to read them. So if you fancy making my day, go give us a review. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again next Tuesday.